They say opposites attract.
Well, how about these opposites? Daddies and sons.
You're listening to Daddy and Son.
A podcast where we explore the dynamics of daddy and son relationships, multi-generational views.
And everything else in between.
Look at your neighbor and say, is the ice cream machine working today? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it. Anybody out there? Are you loving it? Are you loving it? I'll take a number one with the sweet tea and an extra fry and an apple pie. I'll take a quarter pounder with the milkshake and the milkshake and the milkshake and the milkshake.
Yeah, that was Anna Douglas. I just like when we see, you check her out. Her Instagram is Anna Douglas, at Anna Douglas. Yeah, I'm always liking to see black people, especially religious black people, doing their thing and giving a fresh perspective on the Lord's word. You may be asking, why are you talking like that, Alex? Today is Friday, the 29th of March. It is Good Friday. And welcome back to another episode of Daddy and Son. Again, my name is Alex, and
I'm Norm.
this week, we're gonna do something a little bit different. I wanna explore the relationship between being queer or gay and religion. But, before we jump into or dive into this week's episode, how are you doing this week, Norm?
Good. What are we drinking tonight, Alex?
So tonight we're drinking wine.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very.
Red wine.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's very symbolic of the times that we're in right now. It's very symbolic of God's or Jesus's. It's very symbolic of Jesus's time on earth, and so we, as the Bible says.
The Last Supper.
On the Last Supper, as the text says, drink this and in remembrance of me. So we're drinking wine in remembrance of him. Had 3 head injuries, a car accident, and but also really good things as well that are coming out of this week. So, while it has been a test of faith, there is no test without a testimony.
Your week sounds like a lot of people's weeks. Some good things and some not good things.
Yeah, mostly
But
not
we're
so
still
good
here.
things.
Well, yeah, this was a bad week then for you. I would say. But this is Good Friday, so there's at least some good news today,
Exactly.
which we'll talk about later.
Oh, exactly. And we're going to spread some good news.
Mm-hmm.
So, in this week, I want to talk about the story of Good Friday. Coming off the heels of Lent, just like Anna Douglas, I'm really feeling. For Lent this year, had given up all meat products. Like I was already a pescatarian, but I decided this year I was going to go fully vegan. So I didn't even have fish. What about you?
I made no changes to my diet.
No
I'm
dietary
trying to cut
change?
sugar out a little bit, but that I would be doing whether it was Lent, Easter, or Christmas.
Well, I don't know about Christmas and cutting sugar. That sounds like a challenge. But
Well, we're having red wine instead of white wine, and this is cutting sugar as well.
cheers to
Cheers.
that. So yeah, I decided to go fully vegan this year for Lent. So right now, I could use a quarter pounder with the apple pie and the milkshake.
By the way, there's nothing in that Jesus said that said we have to, go on a diet during Lent.
Oh, absolutely
Okay,
not.
Okay, as long as we agree on that.
Lent is about making sacrifices and changing habits that makes us more reverent and focus on our relationship with the Lord. And I believe that in this challenging time, I was able to accomplish that actually. But going into the story about of Good Friday, right? Going to story about Good Friday, I want to first look at who did God surrounded himself with. Looking at the last 24 hours, he had the supper, just as we said, he had his last supper.
Which, by the way, is the Passover meal in the Jewish faith.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are crossovers,
Yep.
and I'm glad that you brought that up. So he, had 12 of his homies over, and his homegirl Mary Magdalene, and they had a good old supper and a good old jolly time. Where he drank his wine and they drank and they ate they broke the bread. And this is according to the text, because you have to say according to the text when it comes on to bad things. So, he said, remember me when you drink this wine, and remember me when you eat this bread as my body. They have their dinner, then they went out into the wilderness where he was praying and basically asking his father, I feel this impending doom. I feel this anxiety. What am I going to do, God? And it was almost like he wasn't hearing anything. But at this time, his homies are like, you know what? We're drunk off wine. Our belly's full. We're going to take a midnight siesta while you just stay over there and do your prayers, right? So then, basically, this is the abbreviated version of the story. Next morning, the feds come, knocking, boom, boom, boom. We're looking for Jesus Christ. So obviously, Jesus is, knows that this is going to come. So he walks at the door and faces the feds. And, he goes and they have the people's court. The people's court, that's how they did it back in those days. They had the people's court and they held trial. And they're like, you want to keep this guy or you want to keep this murderous idiot called Barabbas? So the girls were like, well, I don't know. He seems like a magician or something, but let's just free Barabbas. So then they were like, okay, well, we're gonna crucify him. And this is where God and tells his son, stay steadfast, stay still, and just, march on and bear the cross. So when you hear British people say, it's my cross to bear, that's where that's coming from. So he's taking that cross and he goes up that hill and, he does his thing. As it says in Mark, and this is again according to the text, in Mark 15, 25 to 37, and it was the third hour, and they crucified him. Right? They put an inscription above his head, and it said "King of the Jews." They were kind of mocking him, in a way, which is ironic because just a week before that, it was Palm Sunday. And what were they doing on Palm Sunday? They all were seriously shouting, Hosanna, Hosanna, Why? Because they thought he was the king that was promised. Not the Burger King, but, not the Lion King, but the king.
But they were two different groups in each of those places. The people that celebrated him in Palm Sunday were the people who knew he was the king. But they were expecting him to come in and take over and be the king.
Yeah,
And that was not God's plan.
and free them from the
Yeah.
tyranny of Roman rule. So they were looking to Jesus, right? And with him, they crucify two thieves, right? So flash forward back to Good Friday, right? Stay with me now. So they crucified them two thieves who also was taunting him, right? One on the right and one on the left. He was in the center. He was the center man, right?
One was taunting him, right?
Yeah. And even the soldiers and people were taunting him. So one week they're screaming Hosanna. Next week they're like boo, boo, tomato, tomato, and throwing like rotten vegetables at him, because back in those days they had a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, but also rotten tomatoes as well. That's where rotten tomatoes comes from, right? And they passed by railing on him, wagging their heads and saying, O thou that destroyeth the temple and build it in 3 days, save thyself and come down from the cross. So,
They were mocking him, right?
they see him making miracles
Yeah.
and mocking him, but they don't know that Jesus is staying steadfast because his father, the Father, told him to stay steadfast. And you're gonna be going through some hard times. It's gonna be tough, but stay steadfast. Don't be up there working no miracles. Don't take yourself off the cross now. So likewise, also the chief of priests mockingly said among themselves and the other scribes, he saved others, himself he cannot save. Right? So he's basically saying, homie, save yourself, like prove yourself to us. And this is something that I realize a lot of people do. And even we talk about like minority stress and being gay people, we always try to prove ourselves, you know what I mean? Rather than realizing the relationship that we should be having with God, like Jesus had with God, with his Father, and not trying to prove nothing. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He stayed up on that cross and did what needed to be done like a real G, right? So, looking at verse 33, and when the 6th hour came, see, this is about like 3 o'clock, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. And at that point, right, the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, right? It's like, Eloi, Eloi. See, it was kind of about the steel alloy that they were using to build like the Boeing planes that, keep falling out the sky and them submersibles. Because, Jesus was a forward-thinking man, very forward-thinking. That's why we have AD and BC, because he is the Alpha and the Omega. He knows it all, right? But what this actually means is, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Because even Jesus has a breaking point. It's like, why am I doing all this? And some of them stood by and cried. But when they heard it, they said, Behold, he calleth Elias, Elias being God, right? And one, he filled a sponge with vinegar, one of them soldiers, and put it on a reed. Now, a reed, for those who are listening, like a reed is like a Bible, it's like a Bible stick, right? It's like a long Bible stick. It's like a spear.
Bamboo or something.
Yeah. For those of you like a reed, no, not shade reed, not reading like in Snatch Game, like a reed, an R-E-E-D, right? They gave him it, saying, let us see whether Elias will come and take him down. So even then, they're mocking him. And Jesus cried with a loud voice, and gave up the ghost. And he said, "This is it." And the temples came crumbling down with a large earthquake that shook the earth. Now, see what I'm telling you? Jesus, he took the L. He took the L, the biggest L of all time. And when I think about this story and the L that Jesus took, I kind of feel like today, as I'm sitting in church and I'm reflecting, what really have we learned from Jesus' story? What have we learned as a people? Because, you know, as a Catholic, I must say, one of the things that disappoints me about my church is that we lead with fear. The religion leads with fear, but not with love. Meanwhile, Jesus took the L on his cross to bear was a cross that he bared so that we can live our lives with love and with kindness, but we still seem to lead with fear. Why do you think that is, Norm?
Good question, Alex. I don't live my life with fear, and God came to take fear away. Jesus' death on the cross was to take the sin of the world away. And that takes fear away too. Love takes fear away. That's what God came here to do, was to bring the message of love through Jesus.
It should, shouldn't it?
And the church I attend, I'm not a Catholic, you know, this is a joyful time of year. I was at church last night. I didn't go today like you did. Good for you, by the way. That's great.
It's called, that's devotion.
Yes.
It's playing, go on.
Listen, this is a tough topic to convey to people because it's very personal, but it's also very real. And, you know, the message of Jesus is really about God's love for the world. And, you know, you have an opportunity to accept it, or many people accept it. A lot of people just don't pay a lot of attention to it. And that's their choice if they don't wish to.
That is true. There seems to be a lot of hyper-focusing when it comes on to Christianity. A lot of hyper-focusing, but not a lot of zoning in on the one thing that we should always be remembering, which is love, right? In Isaiah 53, 3-6, it says, "He is," and this is according to the text, guys, remember, when we're talking about the Bible, talk about the text, right? He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way, and the Lord hath laid upon him the iniquity of us all. The iniquity of us all.
That's an amazing prophecy.
It really is. And I'm not saying that we are prophets, but if we're going to call ourselves children of God, then shouldn't we not then hold ourselves to the same status quo as God himself, or as our brother Jesus did himself? You know, Jesus is technically our brother too. And if, you know, sometimes I feel like even just turning, let me not even say turning the next cheek, but sometimes just having a perspective where I don't want to be combative or defensive against people who want to tell me how to live my life. This is kind of a way of me holding burden, but still have to show love and kindness. Is me, you know, that's God laying the burden of the iniquity of mankind upon me.
To me, the message of Jesus on the cross was, it was an action of love by God.
And forgiveness.
Yes, that forgiveness to mankind through Jesus, And Jesus made a pretty unique claim, and a lot of people say that. I don't think I buy that. But he said, I'm the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father by me, but by me. And that's because God said Jesus on the cross is the way to forgiveness and to living a life that is pleasing to God. Now, we all stumble, we all fall. Every Christian is a sinner still. But living a life with Jesus is a way to defeat that, and it's a way to keep the fear away that you were talking about a few minutes ago. Because that is a lousy feeling to live a life of fear, isn't it?
It really is. And I still don't understand how, we were able to build a whole institution to this day where it is just led by fear and shame, and we're not leading with love and empowerment.
Look, if you're going to a church that does that, you need to find another church. That would be and I'm speaking to anybody out there. A church that really believes in Jesus and is preaching the Word of God, the whole idea of that is to dispel fear, to dispel death. It's a message of life. It's a message of love. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and of sound mind. That's in the New Testament somewhere. I'm sorry, I don't know where it is offhand.
Well, what I do know is that Proverbs 14 verse 12 says, "There is a way that seems right to the person, but its end is the way to death." See,
That's spooky.
It sounds macabre, but sounds very macabre. But let me tell you, when I read this, my interpretation is everyone has their own path. At the end of the day, we all born, and we all are gonna die. One day, in the words of Philip DeFranco, one day we all must be skeletons, right? One day we all must be skeletons, but we all must follow the path that is right for us. That doesn't mean it's righteous, but the path that is right for us. And on Judgment Day, Saint Peter and God will make their decision, and that's what I get when I read this proverb. The Bible is very, very clear, when it talks about how you should be treating others and how you should be treating yourself, and that's how I choose to lead. But as I sat in church and I was thinking about the story of Good Friday, I really was thinking, what really have we learned as a people? What lessons have we really learned from Jesus's L?
When you say L, you mean Jesus' what? Love? Is that what you're saying?
No, L, loss. Yeah, he took an L for us.
Okay, yeah, he paid the penalty of our sin.
Yeah, he took the big L.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of how that's kind of a little bit of my thought process on this Good Friday story. We're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna have a discussion about how you live, or how do you feel about being Christian and also being a gay man.
I'm not going to call you Reverend anytime soon.
I mean, could you imagine if I was can you imagine if this was Bible studies and I was giving the kids Bible studies, and I'm here telling the children about you know what? I think the Bible has some really good stories. So I don't know if I told you this. So recently, I just finished reading a book, right? And when I finished that book and I was looking at another book to start, I was like, well, the Bible has multiple books. I can read one of those books. And I started reading the Bible. I'm like, why the hell not?
It's the most read book in the world.
Yeah, it's just like, why not? It's a book. It is a book. Like, why not?
It's the message of God's love for the world. That's how we find out about God, through the Bible.
And I found it, quite compelling. It has really good stories. And maybe every now and again, I will probably do like an Alex's Bible studies where
Well-
I interpret the Bible. I give you the reading of the Bible according to my interpretation.
Yeah, well, you're not going to call you Reverend Alex anytime soon.
you can,
Folks,
you,
just in case you're wondering,
you
Alex
can
and
stick
I
to
have,
Son.
we have very different, somewhat different views of our theology and views, and he's expressed his this evening. I can do mine another time, perhaps.
Well, no, let's not do it another time. Let's talk about that, actually, because that's what I want to talk about right now. It is, how do you differentiate spirituality versus being religious? And which do you see yourself
I don't
being?
have a definition for either. What my life is
I didn't ask
follow
you for a definition. I asked you how do you define it?
what I do with my life is I follow Jesus Christ. I don't know if that's absolutely every human being has a spiritual. You have a spirit and you have a body. We are both. When we die, the body dies, the spirit continues on, and it lives forever. That's the way God intended life, in my opinion, and I think that's what He teaches in the Bible. Religion is the practice of your faith. It includes church, synagogue, whatever. It's the actions that surround the expression of your beliefs. You can be religious and be someone who goes to church. It doesn't make you necessarily someone that is a true follower of Jesus.
Okay.
You're speechless for a change, Alex.
No, I'm not speechless. I thought I was waiting for you to finish answering the question. But the reason I ask that question specifically, it's because I know that you're a man of faith. I would so much so I'd even go as far as to say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Being a man of faith, I would consider to be more religious based on what your religious practices dictate
I understand
than
your
a
term.
spiritual person. Would you say that
Well-
has some accuracy?
Well, a person can call himself spiritual, but not necessarily be a Christian.
Yeah. So
Okay.
they're
All right.
they're not of faith.
They're not necessarily synonymous. I am a spiritual person because I believe in a spiritual side of life. I pray. I know God is real. Do I see Him? No, of course not.
But you believe in the miracles.
Yeah, I believe in miracles.
That's
I believe
a
in
form of
faith.
spirituality.
Yes, it is. I believe God answers prayer. So yeah, that is the spiritual side of me, I guess. I don't think of myself as religious. Some people would look at me and say, "Oh, Norm is religious."
Yeah.
They might look at you and say, "You're religious. You went to church today." But
Yeah, but
I don't buy
I
that.
went to a Pentecostal church, not a Catholic church.
I thought it was Presbyterian.
Yes, thank you, Presbyterian.
Oh, boy, the Presbyterian.
I'm sorry to all the Pentecostals out there.
Don't apologize.
don't-
We're all of one faith.
Shake
okay?
your tambourine for me and spin around
Stamp
and
on
do
the
a
table.
prayer and do a prayer. How do you feel about being,
Gay and Christian.
gay and also being Christian?
I wrestled with that for several years. And remember,
Still?
I can't, no, not now, no. But I did in the early days. I remember I came out back in the 70s. There wasn't any internet. Being gay was just not the thing. I mean, divorce was still a poo-poo thing in society. Like, this was another time. But I realized that I was hearing a few people who sort of felt self-righteous that being gay was wrong, but I didn't get that from God. I got from God, Norm, this is the way I made you. Now live your life by following me. It took a while to come to that. I mean, I shortened maybe 4 or 5 years of struggling and wrestling into like a couple of sentences there, but that's
Yeah.
essentially what happened.
Well, look at that. You got from God wisdom, a head full of hair, and good looks.
White hair now.
Blessings. Blessings. For me, it's... and the reason I ask you that question, it's because I know that, and if you don't mind me sharing this with the audience, you are a PK.
You'll have to explain that. Just
for those who don't know for those who are heathens, they don't know what a PK is. A PK is a pastor's kid, or a preacher kid, or a minister kid, which you are.
Yeah, and I got roused for it in school. So I do something bad and saying, "Oh, you're the preacher's son. You're doing that," and I felt like saying, "I'm going to do it again. How about you?"
Do you think PKs are like some of the most rebellious kids out there?
I was not rebellious.
No?
No, but they can be.
Yeah, I think they can be, but I also think it's because some of the most rebellious people make the best leaders.
Ooh, there's an interesting one. That's a topic on its own. Some of the most rebellious people, because they're individuals.
Because
They buck the system. They buck the trend. Is that what you mean?
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, when I think about some of the most rebellious people, Martin Luther King, and I'm just gonna talk about like niggas here, like Martin Luther King, like Toussaint, Marcus Garvey, Jesus Christ, and nobody's not telling me Jesus Christ wasn't a black man. Jesus Christ was
He was
a
Middle
nigga.
Eastern. He was a Middle Eastern person.
Well, he was a sand nigga.
And
then.
let's not use those words on this here. This is a
So, for
family
me-
show.
A family, he says. Yes, the LGBTQ family. Jesus was a black man, and anybody who has anything otherwise to say can step to the side. So for me, when I think about all these rebellious black people, they also were great leaders. They revolutionized the world. And so for me, I kind of put like PKs in the same bracket. Like I put them in the same bracket. They have the aptitude or the ability for leadership usually.
Well, 20 years later, my dad was a politician, so PK became politician's kid.
Well, there you go. And now you are a lobbyist.
And now I'm a politician myself.
So there we go.
Of sorts.
Of sorts.
An unemployed one, I might add, but that's another topic as well.
Of sorts. No, I really feel like there is some verisimilitude to that.
Can you verisimilitude?
An iota of truth.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. But, for me, not being a PK, but also growing up in a religious family, more specifically a Roman Catholic family, especially with a Cuban father and a half Scottish mother. It was Catholic on both sides, but Catholic in one aspect, like Catholic Plus, like the premium subscription to Catholicism. And then you have the European subscription to Catholicism.
In other words, Rome was next door.
I had to go, like, you're talking about like infant baptism and the whole 9 yards. I think for me, it was my outlook was not very skewed because I'm very thankful that I had parents who, while they were very religious, were also very kind. And you may be asking, like, what do you mean? Aren't all Christians kind? No.
They should be.
They should be, but not because
You're
something should be means it is what it is. So Mother Teresa, right? She, for me, is the perfect example for this. Like someone who was nice, extremely nice, but I wouldn't necessarily consider her to be the kindest. And a lot of people are going to be hearing this and be like, hold up. Not you putting putting stain on Teresa's name. Hear me out.
Saint Teresa, I might add.
Hear me out.
Saint
Anyone
Teresa.
who is going to offer aid to the poor, offer food, but say to you that, if you're going to accept this, you have to accept Christ. To me, that's not kindness.
I don't think she said that.
Yes, she did. She absolutely did.
Well,
she was
was
very conditional into the things that she did, and she did what she did with the sole purpose or with the mandate and the mission of conversion. For me, that's no different from going on a crusade. That's no different from Columbus or Cortez going into the Americas and killing natives in efforts to convert them. It's no different from a crusade or inquisition. You know, it's if you're gonna be a kind and lead by the example of God, you go around. You talk about the word, you do your good deeds, and you keep it stepping. And if people want to follow you through your example, just like Jesus did, that's what I'm saying. What have we actually learned from his behavior? What have we actually learned from Jesus? One of the things that I realized about myself through the way that I was raised, even though I was raised in an extremely religious family, is to be respectful of other people and lead as best as I could through example. And
you're saying she didn't do that?
And I'm saying that's why I think Mother Teresa is nice, but I wouldn't necessarily say that Mother Teresa is kind.
Well, she did acts of love.
But she did acts of love, which is a nice thing to do.
She's following a commandment of God, of Jesus.
Right.
And she was serving people in probably one of the worst environments anybody could ever want to work in. You know, a hot, humid, dirty slum for years.
Mm-hmm. And Jesus was in the Middle East, which was hot and dirty too. Yeah. But again, let's not digress. The point is that it was done conditionally. And if you're able to...
No, I disagree with that. She gave herself to all people. Mm-hmm. She was hoping, and she used that opportunity to, promote the message of Christ's love. But she wasn't going to stop serving you food if you said, no, I'm not interested in Jesus, but I would like something to eat. A true saint, a true follower of Christ will think of love and give the person what they need. And yes, tell them about the message of Jesus. But,
reports from people from India who are
were not Christian,
who are not Christian,
and were opposed to the Christian message,
and were opposed to the Christian message. That is the reports that they have given, and I've always been on the side of you have to hear both sides of the story, because if the only story you're hearing is a story from Christians, then that story is biased. And for me, if you're able to be the type of person where you can be celebrated regardless of your religion, regardless of your religious practices, that is true kindness. That is a true act of kindness. One of the things I've always, I wouldn't even say that I token this on myself, but I've always been able to have partners, friends, loved ones of different religious backgrounds, dogmas, and creeds. And this is because my faith with God is steadfast. So if you are Islamic or you are Jewish, that means nothing to me. But what you mean to me is that you are a child of God just as I am. You are my sister, you're my brother, and I'm going to love you and I'm going to still be kind to you.
And those are his two commandments are to love the Lord your God with all your heart. And the second one is what? To love your neighbor as yourself.
As thyself.
And if you do those two, the other 8 commandments are redundant.
True. I never understand people who struggle with loving people who are not the same religion or same faith as they are. I can never understand it.
They don't love them.
Because
we're supposed to love all people. That's God's command. You love all people.
If you can't love and truly love
in a non-judgmental
way, how do you expect others to follow you? And
or be interested in the rest of your message,
or be interested. Exactly.
I buy that.
And so for me, again, looking at what I struggle with again, with the because I know you're Protestant, but with the Catholic Church, that is the one thing that I've always struggled with, and again, I really am thankful that I was raised in a family that taught me how to be strong of mind, be strong of faith, but still love others who don't share my faith, who don't share my religious practices. And that is what when I think about the story of Good Friday and the L that God that Christ took, that L that he took, that is what I think about. When I think about what have we learned, I want to sit with that memory and kind of
One thing we say in the
percolate on that. Go on.
in the service, in the Eucharist, in the Holy Communion, and I think it's in the Catholic, it's in most Christian communion services that, Jesus died for the sins of the whole world. Everybody, not just Christians or this or that. That's the message of God's love. It's for everybody. And that's why this is such an important time of year in the Christian church. Now, getting back to being gay and Christian, are we going to talk about that on a separate podcast, or is that something we wanted to get into tonight?
I want to get into that right now.
Okay. Fire away.
So, I
And
believe...
by the way, I think they're totally consistent. That would be my answer.
Yeah. I think that there is no... The two things can exist at the same time.
For sure. We have a number of gays at our church. In fact, I wouldn't say it's majority, but it's certainly... They are known, they are loved, they are accepted, they are part of the church just like all other groups are.
Yeah.
That's the way it should be.
Well, if, when did we start not accepting the truth? People should be able to live in their truth. Just like Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the light. Be your own truth. Stand in your own truth. Stand in the light. See, I'm always misinterpreting the Bible.
Well,
don't call me pastor anytime soon.
No, Reverend, we won't. No, but you're saying, and I agree with you, it's possible to be a Christian and gay, and hey, live your life. Live your life. I don't think God judges you because you're gay. There are a lot of people, and I'll tell you.
The only people who judge you are people. The only people who judge you are people. God is not here judging. You close your eyes.
I agree with you. I was my experience. I agree with you.
You talk to him and tell me what he tells you. Tell me what he tells you is in your heart.
Yeah.
And if you hear evil, I don't think that's
God
that's
will
God
not
talking to you,
condemn you
baby.
for being gay. That is the way he made you. But it's funny. It took me years to accept that, partly because I was getting flack messages from, in so many cases, evangelical Christians that were sort of questioning whether I was a real believer. And you know what? Bullshit. I am a believer. I am gay. Tough bananas if you don't like it. And by the way, I looked around and thought, there's quite a few of us like that.
Listen, you're not wrong. And there's more of those few of us than they are of folks who decide that I'm just going to lead with love.
Beautiful. I like that. Lead with love. That is a wonderful motto for a person's life.
Exactly. And you know what? Not only is it a wonderful motto, but it's a good way to wrap up, this segment. We'll be right back. This was a really good episode this week. And, in our closing, just I want to know, do you have any final thoughts on this topic?
Ooh, this was a hard topic.
It's very personal, isn't it?
It's very personal. And I would have said things a little differently than you, but I think we finished on the right tone. Lead with love, and that's what Easter is about. That's what really Easter is about.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And in true fashion, I must ask you, what are you reading this week?
What am I reading? A manual on how to do Excel properly.
Well, you heard
Sounds
it here.
exciting, eh, folks?
Daddy needs to learn how to do his if-till tables.
Yeah, well, I'm setting up my own business, folks, and I have to have a little bit more of the IT administrative skills. So,
Well, that must be very hard for you. I know you're at your age. You're probably a Luddite.
no, I'm not actually. I'm quite proficient.
Is that right?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, you heard that, folks. When it comes on to his office skills, he excels. And that's my dad joke for this week.
Yes.
The son is telling the dad jokes. Look at that.
That's the way it should be.
Tune in for Daddy and Son bi-weekly, wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Thank you for listening.
And be sure to subscribe.
Share and follow. Bye-bye for now.
Goodbye.